everyone, welcome to another episode of the Marketing Fix podcast. This is episode number 10, so we are officially hitting double digits. And we've got a special guest today. His name is Pieter Groenewald. So Pieter is the CEO of the influencer division of Infinity, the group Infinity. Pieter, welcome. Thank you so much for coming all the way through. You're coming from Pretoria, am I right?
I'm based in Pretoria, but our office is in Sandton.
So. Okay. So, all right. So we're around the corner.
Yeah.
So from our side, thank you so much for coming through. It's a massive, honor to have you here. And today I want to discuss, everything we can, and I want to uncover as much as we can about influencer marketing. We cater for the SMEs of the world, and I want to uncover as much as we can. So I don't know when you have to leave, but you're going to have to stop me because I'm going to keep you here until we get dehydrated.
Like fun.
No, shame, man. Thanks again for coming through. Maybe you want to start with a little bit of an origin story just about who you are and kind of like how you got involved with influencer marketing.
Yeah, thanks, Jandre. It's an honor to be here, and hopefully we're going to have a great chat about my passion, which is influencer marketing. Background, come from the farm, small town in the Karoo. Went to study, become an accountant, and pretty soon realized, listen, this is not really for me. So I joined in a financial capacity into a media company, and then I saw, but the sales guys are having all the fun and they interacting with clients on a daily basis, and they driving the nice shiny cars, and that was basically the end of the road as an accountant for me. So I've asked my then boss, and he's today my partner. Partnership that spanned over 20 years.
Wow.
Ask him, listen, what do I need to do to get on the other side? And he took me through the journey, and then I realized, listen, okay, it's great to sell, but it's also great to establish new products. And I think at the end of the day, having done all of it, and with the financial background and passion for business, marketing today is probably very suitable for people that's very analytic and that understand the commercials, because everything is performance-based. And I think it's just all these skills that I've gathered over the years allowed me about 10 years ago to establish our first influencer marketing business in South Africa.
Wow.
We were way ahead of the wave at the time. So it was a hard slog for the first possibly 5 years. And then the momentum started picking up. And today I'm very grateful for all the school fees we've paid, the 10,000 hours we've invested into that space, and just a phenomenal journey. And it's something that I honestly believe works incredibly well for brands. And that's our passion, sharing it and helping businesses deploying it.
So my question is this. So you were obviously in the financial sector, and you mentioned that you saw that the sales guys, they had all the fun. We were talking about the other day, we had Ari Flax, who's the head of sales of a company called ATG, but we were saying, like, back in the day, people looked at sales and salespeople as snake's oil salesmen. And everybody, when you said you're a salesperson, people were like, oh, why? Like, it's not something people aspire to be. But today, marketing and sales is quite sexy. And I've mentioned it before, like, it's becoming quite a must-have skill. And I think people are starting to become aware of it because it's a lot easier to start a business than it's ever before. And people are realizing that they need to market and sell this business. You can't just, it's not about build it and they will come scenario. At what point did you realize that influencer marketing is really something that's going to, dominate the marketing industry, one? And two, how did it become a passion? Like, what is it that you're really passionate about? Like, I mean, it's easy to say I'm passionate about, but what is it that really gets you going in terms of influencer marketing?
Yeah, so just to come back to your point about the ability to sell is, like I said to my son the other day, I said, if you can sell stuff, you'll never go hungry.
100%.
Because that's what's keeping businesses ahead, is people that can move the product from the business to the consumer.
And also on that note, you are marketing and selling yourself all day without even knowing it. Whether you're having a negotiation with your wife or your son or your boss, or if you're in a meeting, you're marketing yourself, you're selling yourself. If you're in an interview, you're marketing and selling yourself. So subconsciously, I think we do it like 60, 70, 80% of the time, if not more.
Exactly. And then especially if you develop products, you must have the ability to secure the first couple of sales yourself. Because that's where you learn those first couple of meetings where you pitch a new product. That's where you learn, what do I need to tweak? And you get better. So we normally got a process of, you need to reach out to about 10 people. And those first 10 meetings is literally you just learning. What do I need to tweak? What do they like? What don't they like? What questions come up? And then you can deploy a sales force. Because then you've made it like almost bulletproof the product.
Yes.
When you get more people. But you can't tell people to sell unless you can sell yourself.
100%.
So you need to be able to bring in the deals and convince people to trust you with their money. Because in the marketing world, that's what you do. Is you need to be able to position yourself that I demand your money because I will deliver the following results to you. And I think that your own business works on the same philosophy. Don't give me everything you've got and just trust. Let me show you what I can do. And then you start giving me more and more and more. And that's how the world works today. So just to influencer marketing, at the time, I mean, as we didn't even hear of the word influencer marketing, but that's what we were doing. So the first business we established was a nano influencer business. Today it's called The Salt.
Oh, okay.
And the idea with that business was to get ordinary people to represent brands. Because I know, at the time I knew that if I'm a brand fan, say for instance I'm a Alfa Romeo enthusiast, I've got the ability to sell more Alphas than anyone else on the back of my trusted referral. And we created this business to say we need a huge database of people that we can select from, but that we got sufficient data around them to pair them perfectly to brands. And then what's happening ordinarily, we need to amplify. We need to create more conversations around the brand you represent. And the first part of the business was really a brand ambassador that offline had to engage. And then social media started picking up, and we quickly moved to social media. And then we realized, listen, now we can scale this. And that was the first business. And nano influencers only picking up. So what is a nano influencer?
Yeah, that was going to be my question.
If you go and Google it now, people put numbers to it. And they say someone has got a following of less than 3,000. My own definition of a nano influencer is someone that knows his whole audience.
Okay.
So if you connected to me on Facebook, I accepted your invite. And I'm the kind of guy, if I don't know you, I'm not accepting you into my circle of influence. And so for me, a nano influencer is someone that's not about numbers. It is about knowing his audience, because then you're really influential on them. That's when you start getting different engagement rate, different conversations. Conversations goes not only offline, it also goes online and vice versa. From online, offline, because I'm not going to comment on your post. I'm just going to drop you a WhatsApp. That's nano influencer. Now, nano influencing has become a big thing in the last 2 years. It's probably the flavor of the month within the influencer marketing space. But like I said, we've been doing it for 10 years. And because traditionally, the second business we then got was a macro influencer business called Webfluential. Also proudly South African business. Some very clever guys founded here 6 years ago. First to market, so obviously means got a big database of registered influencers.
Yes.
But that's a traditional, that's what, if you ask anyone in marketing, what's influencer marketing, it's beautiful people with product images on Instagram and things like that. And there's a place for it, and it's a very technical buy, because you need to use technology in a huge way to understand audiences, pairing through AI influences to brands to make sure it's the right fit. And then the collaboration and stuff take place. And then so after those two businesses, we realized, listen, but we're getting quite a bit of money coming into the space. It's quite easy to convince people to allocate a portion of their budget towards influencer marketing. But when you've done everything and you present back to your client, everyone is sitting like with blank faces, not knowing, did this work, didn't this work, kind of thing. And then I said, no. There's no one else in the country that only work with influencers. So you got your media owners, people like The Salt, Webfluential, and then you get your agencies that every now and then got an influencer campaign that they work on. But it's such a fast developing world that we need to get basically a boutique agency together that can strategize around influencer marketing. And we then created one called Influential.
Okay.
And they help businesses with a blueprint. So if you want to throw money into the sector, you realize, listen, I'm one of the few brands that haven't dipped in here, or I've dipped into it and it didn't really work, then that should be your first knock to say, listen, let me go and find out how can I get a solid strategy together with measurable outcomes, and where it makes commercial sense for me to follow the investment. And that then becomes your blueprint. And then you can go into the implementation phase. And then the fourth business was, as we engaged with more and more customers, a lot of them were saying to us, but listen, we contracting different people to talk on our behalf. What about our own people? Because they're very passionate about their business. And some more research and case studies and even our own internal projects. Then we launched the employee advocacy business. And that's called the internship.
Okay.
And that's where you help businesses to become digitally more visible through their employees. Now, if you think about it,
Nice.
they should do that, but somehow it's not happening naturally.
Yeah. And a lot of companies sit with a lot of staff members who are more than willing to be articulate about, how awesome the business is. Yeah.
Exactly, and it works phenomenally well in a South African context and a B2B space. Because if you think most B2B businesses, we've got very limited marketing channels because it's so niche.
Yeah.
So you've got your golf days, and then instead of the MD rocking up, the ITO rock up to your golf day.
Yeah,
And then you try and host a breakfast, and you get all these RSVPs. It costs you a lot of money, and half the people pitch. And then you got your trade magazines, and you get to your customer, and there in the corners, all the trade magazines still in the plastic bags.
Yeah.
So you're really battling and then you rely on your sales team, and you say to your sales team, you need to go and knock on doors.
Yeah.
In my day, I used to do 10 meetings a week. You should, but times have changed.
Yeah.
It's a new era. People, and now post this COVID, you're going to battle to meet people in person. It's going to be virtual, and as a result, now more than ever, employees need to be more visible on channels like LinkedIn, talking about your company, your new product launches, your specials. Not hard selling, just being visible.
Yes.
And the power of it is you become visible at scale, and you become visible to people in a network that you've built that's important for you and that's relevant to you, and you become visible when they need you. Because that's the most difficult thing for a salesperson today is I can get in front of you, you might like me, you might like my product, but your timing is wrong.
Yes.
And when the timing is right, you're not there.
And the bigger the ticket item that you're selling, the longer that sales cycle is. So the chances of you finding someone that's not ready is always, there's a high probability of that.
Exactly. And that was then our employee influencer business. And then the last one is very similar to what we're doing here now. Is we created a podcast business. And I always joke around that because not everyone's got a face for Instagram. And the podcast business is another way of influence. Because like you've got an audience that regularly tune into your episodes, and it's a learning experience. And what we now do is we get brands to, on behalf of brands, we create podcasts that attracts a certain audience.
Okay.
And then we attach the brand to the content in a very authentic way. It works extremely well where you're after niche audiences and where you've got high lifetime audiences, because this is not a cost per thousand channel.
100%.
It's a little bit more expensive, but then your engagement is next level. I mean, I've offered up half an hour of your time, in Joe Rogan's case, 3 hours of my time to engage with a podcast. That's very powerful, because most forms of advertising is pushed towards you.
Yes.
Podcasts, you elect to tune in.
Yeah. You're pulling people in. Yeah. So it's always the push versus pull mechanisms.
Yeah. So that and that completes. So as a group, we believe that if we only had one channel, we'll always force that channel into your objective to be the solution. The fact that we've got multiple channels, I can really listen and consider what are your real needs. And sometimes you come in and you say, listen, I want to do nano influencers, but within 10 minutes of engaging with you, I realize, listen, you're a B2B business. Those channels ain't going to work for you. And then we can we can suggest alternatives and we can explain why, and you don't have to go and pay the school fees other people have paid over the years, you know.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And I think I want to take a quick step back and kind of like ask in terms of influence and marketing. I want to kind of like explain to everybody's listening, like, you know, what it actually is and how it actually works, and kind of like break it down on a ground level, because what we talk about on this podcast is a lot about putting your message out into the world, and we've just talked about that, pushing versus pulling. So, you know, you, for example, go onto social media and you talk as on behalf of your brand to the public, and I want to kind of like, this is influencer marketing is a completely different perspective. Like, this is where the public talks on behalf, you know, you're talking on behalf of the public. You're talking to the public on behalf of the brand. The public is talking about your brand. Yeah, sorry. For a second, my brain stopped working. But essentially, that's kind of like the difference, that push versus the pull. I'm telling you my business is awesome, and that's what every single other business is doing right now. Like, everybody's putting their hand up, going like, we're awesome, we've got good pricing, we've got a great service, we're unique in this way. And the best form of credibility, in my opinion, would be other people talking on your behalf, telling, look, listen, go to that company, chat to them. Like, I've had a great experience there. So almost like we call it testimonials in our environment, where we tell people, look, here's a video of one of our clients. We've grown their business from, you know, this amount to that amount. And that builds a ton of trust and credibility. And influencer marketing, I suppose, is very similar, but it's kind of like on a next level, right?
Yeah, so Mark Zuckerberg refers to influencer marketing. He says a trusted referral is the holy grail of advertising. And I've actually got an example of in 1918, 1928, I'm not sure about a year, was the first example of an influencer marketing post. It's done by mail, and I actually shared with you afterwards, because it's fascinating what the guys have done
That
back
must be
then.
awesome, yeah.
But influencer marketing's been around forever.
Yeah.
Because if I go to a restaurant and I have a good experience and I bump into you and you say, what did you do this weekend? I said, listen, we went Saturday night to this restaurant and you must go there. That is what every brand is after. Because that's a trusted referral. That particular venue has now moved from not being in your top 10 venues that you want to go and visit to possibly your top 3. Think about it. And that's on the back of a trusted referral. Because why? You trust me first, you know me. The more better you know me, the more you trust me. If you know I'm a foodie and I'm passionate about it, that will go not to the top 3, it will go to the first place you must go and check out. So in 2005, when social media came out, when you said earlier on you've got SMMEs, every business got the ability to utilize influencer marketing. Because if you've got a shelf talker on your tables in your restaurant saying to people, if you enjoy this, hashtag us and post a picture. That's a testimonial. That's influencer marketing. It's done on a small scale, and it's probably not as controlled as you want it, but it's working perfectly. But to come back, so in 2005, when social media came out, all of a sudden what happened was these tribes that we belong to started expanding. Because back then, if someone moved to Australia, he was out of your tribe, you never heard of him, and every 2 years someone will mention, have you heard from me, something. But the fact that he moved to Australia now, he's still connected to you. You still know what's happening in his life, how many kids he's got, where he's working, and these tribes start growing. Now, the big influencers today made a business of growing those tribes exponentially. So if you're a celebrity or you're a DJ, you'll see they've got huge following. Now, what makes that different? Now, we as influencer marketers, our belief is brands cannot belong to those tribes. So that you can call any brand, he cannot come into a WhatsApp group, he cannot really come and join you in your Facebook group. Because why? He doesn't really have your interest at all. You follow him. So that's what, when social media happened, we start following brands, but brands can't follow you really.
Yeah, makes sense.
So now the world has started communicating digitally in these tribes, call it a WhatsApp, Facebook group, Instagram group, whatever. Brands cannot belong, so brand sits on the outside.
Yeah. Even if they try and belong, it just they don't fit in.
No. So you take my mountain bike group. As soon as Specialized move in there, I'm out because Specialized doesn't have my interest at all. They
Yeah.
want to sell something to me.
Yeah.
They don't want to recommend something to me.
And even if they did have good intentions, you're not going to see it like that, just
That's-
purely because your impression will be like you're here to sell.
But on the other hand, the group trusts each other. The fact that you belong to the group comes with a level of trust. Otherwise, the group will kick you out. But most members in a group are being trusted. I use the example, if I wake up in the morning, my kitchen floor is wet, my geyser bursts, what do? You jump on the local WhatsApp group, you say anyone can recommend a plumber. People don't have to justify and send CVs around a plumber. They just send a number.
Yeah. Here's
And-
John. He was amazing. Helped us last week.
Well, they don't even have to send it amazing. Sometimes they do it, but the number will get called.
Yeah.
Because why? Because there's a level of trust in their tribe. So now your brand sits outside the tribe, and with advertising and marketing, he shouts at the tribe. And sometimes his message does go through. It's a very costly exercise because you need to shout hard these days with everyone shouting at tribes.
Yeah. You need to be unique. Yeah.
So our belief, our core belief, the foundation of influencer marketing, I say it's a better way for a brand to be introduced into a tribe through a tribe member, because that comes with trust. So and that's what we do. If you can, so the whole time you've got a message from a brand perspective, we think how can we in an authentic way introduce this into a tribe conversation. And the better you do it, the more skillful you're at it, the more authentic it would be, and the more it will resonate with that particular audience. And from there, then you will start getting the different commercials working which you're after.
You know what I've seen? Like brands are becoming more personal. Like if you look at Tesla, if you look at, Elon Musk would be the classic example. Okay, he's an influencer for his own brand, but brands to an extent are becoming more personal. A lot of smaller sized medium businesses, they have the ability to be very personalized because people fall in love with the owner. But even so, like that is not, good enough. Like there's still that level, there's still that disconnect because it's your business. And essentially, what I've found with influencer marketing, like you've said now, in terms of there's just that extra level of trust that you can't get anywhere else. That extra level of credibility that you can't get no matter who you are. Whether because I've got a couple of acquaintances who've got their own businesses, and people go, no, speak to John. John's amazing, and that's his business, and he's got his own following, and people trust him, people love him, and his business is associated with his name. So he's almost like an influencer to some extent, but yet there's still that disconnect. Because people who don't know John, essentially, like there's always that level of trust that still needs to exist in some way, shape, or form, what influence marketing kind of like takes care of. I hope I'm making sense of what I'm trying to explain.
No, 100%. So Tesla is a very good example because you're right. Elon is the influencer. Great product, great brand. And if you go and look at their marketing approach, there's actually great case studies around it. So I think their advertising spend per unit sold is around about $5.
I've seen
Compared to if you go and look at the two German sedans that they're up against, the brands, I think as their numbers run at like $250 to $300 per unit sold. Okay. And the only reason for the difference is Tesla encourage, and now we're going on to a different topic, but it's like growth hacker marketing. They encourage their clients to do those trusted referrals, and they incentivize them to do it.
And they've got their own tribe almost to an extent.
So if I refer Tesla to you, that referral is connected to me, and certain other benefits are being allowed to me now on the back of that referral. So they've got a fascinating. They're actually one of the 10 companies I would always look at and say, listen, why are they so different to the rest of the world? Because of the fact that they've gone about it differently. If they had to go the same approach as the others, they wouldn't have had the market cap they've got now.
100%. And like I said, I think Seth Godin wrote the book Tribes or something, and that's kind of like what they've done really, really well. There's another company, maybe you've heard of them, called Zappos. So they're in America, and they started with just selling shoes. All they did was shoes. The book is called Delivering Happiness. So it's the founder, Tony Hsieh, I think is his name, CEO of Zappos. They got bought up by Amazon for millions. But essentially what happened was they literally focused on the customer experience, and they essentially did something very similar to Tesla, where they built a tribe of people who just love the experience of the brand. And they were the first company to say, okay, we're selling shoes online, we know it's difficult to fit, take as many pairs as you want, send whatever you don't want back. So they were the first company that started that initiative. And one of the things that they said was their marketing spend to some extent was next to zero, but they put all their marketing spend that, as opposed to doing traditional stuff, they put it into customer support. And they used that as a vehicle in order to build trust and credibility with the people who's shopping from them, and that started creating their own tribe. So, I mean, I just wanted to touch on that because I thought it was very relevant
it's a good example
to a similar strategy to what Tesla's been doing.
Yeah. No, so I've come across that, and there's plenty of examples. And then a great thing today, if you understand the ability to infiltrate tribes, you can punch way above your weight division. Because, like, if you go and look at the growth of like Facebook and Google in terms of what they demand, I think is the latest numbers I've seen is they take 60 cents out of every dollar spent. And the reality of that is they grew the market. Because if you had a product that you wanted to sell 10 years ago, you wouldn't have a budget to go into a magazine. You wouldn't be able to buy billboards or radio ads. Now today, straight away, you can go onto social media and you can launch a brand. And actually over this COVID period, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's fascinating for me how many people are hustling out there.
Yeah,
how many new brands you're seeing, people selling, and how effective these social media tools are helping them to do.
It's inspiring, man. Like, I feel like everybody needs to have that mindset of like doing whatever you need to do. The other question I have is in terms of the influencer marketing. Can you put it in perspective on how big this industry actually is and potentially where it's going? Because I think, it's all about perspective. Like, and when I was probably about 10 years ago, or maybe even just before I finished school, I remember watching a lecture of, how small the Earth really is. So obviously, as a kid, being a certain age, you think, okay, well, the Earth is big, and I know there's bigger planets out there. And then I watched this one lecture. I was like 16 or something, and it was like, okay, let's put in perspective how big the universe actually is. And then it goes back to from star, and then you see the sun, and then you go like, wow, now the Earth is like a tiny sand drop to the sun, and then you see another star that's bigger than the sun. So I think in terms of that kind of like puts things in perspective to where things are. Like, we understand that we're actually very small, and we actually, we don't really matter in terms of what is out there. So my question is, in terms of influencer marketing, can you try and put things in perspective to where the industry is, where it's going, where does it start, the growth behind it, how many more companies that are jumping onto it? Any stats would be great, just to put things in perspective.
So in 2016, the influencer marketing value was put at $1.5 billion per annum.
Okay.
In 2016.
And compared to, what are we comparing it to? Because I mean, that's a lot of money. But
so let's compare then to where it's in 2019.
Okay.
In 2019, that number jumped to $6.5 billion.
So it went
so
from
it
1
means
point?
it tripled in 3 years.
Oh, sorry. What was the original number?
1.5.
Okay.
To 6.5.
Sure. Okay.
So that's the size. Now, just last year alone, there was 380 apps launched around influencer marketing.
Wow.
So 380 tools that's been designed to assist people to execute influencer marketing campaigns. And I think the biggest development that has taken place this year, because remember, and for me, when you say the size of the market is more how the big players are reacting to it. So Facebook controlled all social media spend, so between them and Google. And YouTube to some extent, and then came the influencer marketing thing, but influencer marketing was going outside those channels, so they didn't see that money. It was between the people that operated and the influencers.
Yes.
And then this year, Facebook and Instagram have launched now incredible tools to make influencer marketing to execute it much more measurable and efficient within their platforms. So now the money is going through them again. And platforms like that wouldn't have made that change if they didn't see it as a real threat.
Yeah, 100%.
And yeah, so I think that's the encouraging part, that it's growing phenomenally. So within the digital is growing, and within digital, influencer marketing is starting to grow. The graph is certainly
on the upwards,
growing faster than what digital on its own is growing.
Yeah, it is definitely growing at a rapid rate. It's also a bit more, I would say, fresher.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, I think, and I'm speaking under correction, and that's why you're here today, What is the industry like in South Africa and the growth within the industry? Are we? I mean, obviously, we're much smaller than the United States, where influencer marketing is probably the biggest. I'm assuming. I'm speaking under correction. What is the market like here? And then, I mean, is it also on the incline at the same ratio to other countries and etc.?
So, I mean, as we're a relative, like you say, a small country compared to, for instance, the States and Europe. But we probably got, in terms of influencer solutions, companies that offer their solutions in these countries. So all the main players internationally, or let's say probably 80% of the main players internationally, got presence here.
Okay.
We probably, I think if you add them all up, I think it's on a landscape the other day, we've done an exercise through that strategic agency of just to evaluate who's out there. And I think we've got about 32 players in South Africa.
Okay.
Which is a lot.
Yeah, hundreds.
And then there's new ones coming in every month. Or call it every 2 months or every quarter you got a new one. Now, if you go and look at your more traditional media, that's not the same trend you see.
No, true.
You see publications being closed down, and you see a lot of consolidation taking place across other areas. So that's the growth locally. And then, we come up with unique stuff here. Obviously, part of our role is to educate the local market.
Yes.
But also stay abreast of trends.
Yes.
And I can tell you, we're doing stuff here that's not being done anywhere else in the world. So, to give you an example, with what we've got 15 different languages, official languages. So that's a headache for any brand.
I can imagine.
So I can't communicate to all the different tribes in their language, so I just do English.
Yes.
Influencers allow you to communicate your brand message through the vernac that the influencers select to communicate in.
Also in a way that you probably would never be able to.
Never. So if vernac is important to you and I need to, then you go and select influencers who, like me, I'm an Afrikaans person. My posts are Afrikaans. If I post in English to represent a brand, everyone will sit back and say, why is he posting in English? And that's the same with African languages here. So first of all, you solve that problem. Now, a lot of international territories don't have that problem, but we're using influencer marketing to solve that. Secondly, we're pairing nanos with micros, because we do have a very strong offering of nano influencers in South Africa. That sold businesses, I haven't seen a replication of that anywhere in the world. And internationally, they can talk about nano influencers, but they don't know how to execute it. So we're streets ahead of other territories in that regard. So yeah, as the problems influencer marketing is solving is, first of all, and you relate to it, people don't trust brands. We spoke about that. Influencer content performs 8 to 11 times better. Just the brand saying something.
In terms of, when you say better, what metric are we referring to?
So we can look at different things. If it's about, where you take a brand message and you say you want to measure the click-through to a website, versus me saying, listen, go and check out this website.
Okay, so if the average ad is like 2% click-through rate, the influence will be 4 or 5? Or
yeah, you'll get significantly more, and it's very measurable. And then the second thing is, this world has become content hungry. You guys in your space, is to just stay ahead of having enough content to get out there. It takes up too much time. So
absolutely. What
I often say to people is we spend too much time creating content and too little time on how hard that content should work for us.
Oh, you're hitting the nail on the head, and I'm super passionate about that. So I just want to touch on that. So the biggest thing we face is like a small to medium-sized business would come to us and say, look, we want to quote for 3 posts a week and someone to help us with community management and this and that. And it's all organic stuff. And then obviously we don't really specialize in that. It's not, I don't believe in offering a service that's not really, there's no intellectual property behind that, right? So essentially we would say, look, do you actually need all of this? And they're like, yeah. And then I would have to go and look at their social media page and they have 200 likes or 200 fans. And I said, you want to spend 3 to 10 grand a month on just creating content, if not more. You want to have a dedicated person monitoring your community when there's going to be probably 1 reply a month. So people have, a misperception on what actually matters. So we obviously advocate spend because we believe that's, one of the more measurable ways and predictable ways that you can penetrate the market if you have your business metrics in place. But that's what you were saying. Like, essentially, that's the biggest problem. I think people don't necessarily know how to go about, doing the actual metrics. And from our side, I think that's one of the biggest pain points we have. People would, the cost of creating content, there's no money behind actually getting that content to work for you. So we believe it's about 60% needs to be focused on distributing that content, and about 20, 30, or 40% needs to be spent on creating the content. So there's always a lot more work needs to be done in terms of distributing the content. Yeah.
No, we're on the same page. I mean, as I look at, but that's why. And then if you take the time of content creation, it's not only the creation of it, it's also the approval process and the time it takes. So now you've got your artwork, the draft artwork. Now the exco comes in, the marketing, everyone gives it input. You go for a second change or whatever. The world is not about perfection today. I could put that brief out, the same brief you give your agency to create content. I could take the same brief out, and if you say, listen, my market is 20 to 40 years old, and it's female, then I say, let's go and pick a spread of influencers 20 to 40 years old. We give them the same brief and say, go and create for us content and push it out.
Yeah.
That content will be out within 24 hours. And now I can sit back and I can see what content is performing best.
Yeah.
And the content that's performing best, the audience have spoken, the tribe has spoken. Now I take that particular piece of content and then I put performance behind it. And then, so it's not what you like or I like because I'm 40 years old and you're 20 years old and I need to match that in a boardroom, what's the best creative. No, I let the tribes decide. And that's the beauty of influencer marketing. They're also your content creators. So when people say it's expensive, sometimes you need to have that conversation. Guys, you totally take content creation out. And then the content of an influencer should be used 3 times. The first time when the influencer distributed to his audience, because that's why he's done it. He knows how to communicate to his audience. That's why they connected with him. And then the second time is when you say, now that I've learned which content is performing well, I need to put performance behind it. Now we're using the same tools that you use from a brand perspective. Yes. So it's apples with apples comparison, which one is performing best. And then the third time you should use that content is when a brand starts using it as part of their content plan. So instead of filling your social media pages with branded content, every now and then pushing through some influencer content as well. And then you sweat it hard. Then it worked really hard for you. And normally we negotiate those usage rights for quite a period of time with the influencers. So you got access to that depending on you 3 to 6 months afterwards.
Okay. Yeah, and I think when you say, you put performance behind it, you mean putting media budget behind it, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where we then sit back and so you sit with the 100% of the media budget. Yeah. And you've got your metrics. We come in and we say, listen, let the influencers do the work, but give us an allocation of that. And then, and you might say, listen, for proof of concept, I'm going to give you 10% of my media budget. Okay, yes. And then when you got the same metrics, you can sit back and say, listen, we should probably have 50 or 40% of our budget sitting there. And then you need to work out what, because your brand cannot disappear completely. Yes. It has to be there, but it cannot be, I don't believe they should have 100% of the share of voice. And then another benefit is, we haven't touched on it, but influencer marketing also tends to travel better than branded content. Travel in a way as if I put out a tweet, and a brand puts out a tweet, there's a much better chance that my tweet will be retweeted. Okay. And that retweet means I now access eyeballs which I don't pay for. We call it earned media, and we call it influencer content travels well. Yeah. So you might buy into, when I put my proposal down to you, I'll say, listen, this is what I can guarantee you, but there is the earned media factor. And the better, if you say, well, that's important because I don't have a huge budget, but I need to create a lot of awareness. Then we'll sit and say, okay, so we need, in the collaboration and the content we push out, we need to align it a little bit more to travel purposes. Okay. And as it then start being reshared and retweeted, you start getting access to these free eyeballs. And then you can quite easily sit back at the end of the work and your CPMs just drop completely. Oh, because really? Now you've got eyeballs that didn't cost you a cent. That's cool. And then also what you do is, like, if you want to dominate share of voice. So your brand is, maybe you're a pizza delivery service or pizza service, And Friday night, you're running at capacity. Everyone's ordering pizza, so you're not going to advertise then. But you might battle on Wednesday evenings where you're sitting on 40 or 50% of your capacity. And then you say, right, what I'm going to do is I don't have a lot of budget, so I can't dominate share of voice throughout the week. But Wednesdays from 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I want to be between 4 and 7. People need to know about it. Then we concentrate all influencer activity over those 2-3 hours.
Okay.
That's where you normally get the trends going and things like that.
Oh, nice. And that's specifically, I mean, on any channel, obviously, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah. So again, when you've got, this is, sometimes people come to us and say, my target market is 30 to 40, but I want a TikTok campaign. So no. That's not, so
Not yet.
You ain't moving an influencer. He's got his preferred platforms where he builds his audiences. So if you say this is a Facebook campaign, you got to realize that a bulk of your audience will be middle age, because that's where Facebook built its audience in this local country. If you say I want to do Instagram, you got to realize it's a little bit younger. And then the fascinating thing is, like, Facebook built audience and they've got their core users, and those are guys that got onto the platform probably 20 years ago or 2005 when it came out. Then Instagram came, and Instagram realized, I'm not going to move that audience. I'm always going to be their secondary platform. But if I go for the young audience now, that will be my primary audience.
Yes.
And that's how they got it. And then Facebook bought them out. So now Facebook actually
They're controlling
control
the majority.
two sort of eras.
Yeah, and they have overlapping demographics.
They do, because Facebook got your secondary platform is Instagram, and Instagram's got secondary. Now, TikTok came in as the third one, realizing I'm not going to get the audiences from them to come across and be my primary. So they went for the school kids. 10 years from now, they will control the demographic 20 to 30.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I think the biggest demographic that's growing at the moment is 30-year-olds. So 25 to 34-year-olds. They're growing at about 30-odd% faster than other demographics at the moment on TikTok, which is insane. So, I mean, I look at those analytics all the time. And
Do you trust those numbers? That
no,
you
it's
see
not that
behind?
I mean, that's just interesting to see, like, whether it's true or not. I mean, hopefully you always assume that it's reputable sources. But nonetheless, like, I do see that slowly but surely the 25 to 30-year-olds are definitely growing. But majority, I think 60% of the audience is still under 25. So it's about 70% of the audience is still under 25, yeah.
So they've got a campaign going now to get older people onto the platform. So and I think it will be successful to some extent.
Yeah.
But what do I want from my audience? I want my audience to have my primary platform, and we all got our primary platform.
Yeah.
Then we got a secondary. Now, even although you might get a group of people from to come onto it, will it be their primary platform?
Yeah.
And we think, or our objective is to utilize influencers for influencer campaigns, utilizing their primary platform.
Yeah. Also, one thing to keep in mind is, like, who's on the platform. I mean, even if it's a teenage kid, does that teenage kid have influence over her mom buying something? Because if that teenage kid is seeing a product and she's got influence over her mom to buy her that school product or whatever it is, like a clothing, accessories, whatever it is, then it's a great place to advertise, because the kid is going to go to the mom and say, Mom, I want these glasses, I want this watch, or I want, these kind of clothes, or whatever it is. So I suppose that you need to understand your audience, through and through before you decide to choose an influencer channel. Before we start talking about the different channels, this is where.
But just on that point, very good, because that's where strategy comes in.
Yeah.
Who's the key influencers of my product? We had a fascinating campaign recently. Now, last year my oldest son matriculated, and the brand came in because they're selling courses post-matric. And they said, okay, they need to reach out to matric pupils now. And I sort of explained, I said, yeah, we can do that. That would be Instagram focus and maybe YouTube or whatever. But I said, I found that when I was in that process, the parents are the main influencers. So you need to put the opportunities in front of parents, and specifically maybe mums, and let them then pass it on. And the campaign was actually split with a dual approach, measuring which one is better, attracting the most traffic.
Yes.
And it ended up that it was actually the parent side.
Oh, okay.
Because as a parent, and me going through that phase now is very important that you guide your child in his career decision.
True.
There are some kids that grew up, I want to become a doctor, but they a small percentage. You know, they're 5% of the matriculants out there. The others need guidance, and normally the parents are the. So you need to make them aware what's available out there. Anyway.
100%. No, I mean,
Side note.
No, but that makes a ton of sense, and I think that's why you need to understand your audience and who you're speaking to, and who you actually are trying to articulate to. So this is where I want to get a bit granular, because I want to provide as much value as possible to everybody listening. I hope I'm not going to bore you with all these questions. So everybody thinks that influencer marketing at the moment, the perspective is, or the perception is, I just give a product to someone and then I ask them to tell their audience about it. Is that the case? Like, is influencer marketing a situation of where you give someone product and then allow them to just, do their thing? Is there more to it? Do you have to, what do you have to consider? If I'm a small to medium-sized business who have never done this before, I've never heard the word before, you've now explained to me kind of like what it is in terms of, okay, I know that I'm dealing with communities and tribes and people who are talking to their friends, and it's kind of like a referral kind of feeling to it. But now, if I want to go ahead and kind of like plan something, what do I need to be aware of? Is it just a matter of like giving someone product and letting them do their thing, or how do we go about it?
So I think that's how it started off. Is you do a product drop to 100 people, and you hope some of them give you a recommendation on social media. Okay. Those were the early days.
Okay, not anymore.
And so I always use the explanation. It's the same. You say, listen, I've got here's my ad. I want it in some print publications.
Yeah.
Who would place it for free? Who would place it at? It will be publications you don't normally want to be associated with. So those were the early days. Today, for me, if you do it like that, it's a cheap and nasty way of doing it. Because, first of all, influencers are bombarded with product.
True.
And you have to go through the timelines of each and every one to see how many products, how many competitive products you had, and this takes time. So because you got a mailing list of 100 influencers, you don't know if they're the right people to be aligned. So you don't know if, let's look at your craft gin, you don't know if last week they spoke about another craft gin. And they said last week, this is my favorite. And now the following week, this is my favorite.
True.
So you can't do it like that. So our recommendation is that if awareness is your objective, that you use more micro to macro influencers to create beautiful content for you, and then push it out to their audience. If authenticity is important for you, so let's say, for instance, a couple of years ago, we've done a campaign for a particular brand of dog food. Now, then we go nano influencers. And I actually had to go and find people that supporting that particular brand already for a few years. And then I said, right, now I want to bring you onto a program. You're a brand fan, we're going to make you a super fan. And that's then when that person posts about the particular dog food, his audience know he's been feeding that. And if they question his authenticity, he can say back, listen, I've been pulled in by these guys to help them with a brand, but I've been using this product for 5 years. And you all know that. And that's real. So when you go to nano influencer, it's not macro influencer. You don't know if they're a fan of the product, but that's why their history on what they posted about, what brands they represented is very important, and that's why high-tech software comes into play.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you say is, you as the business owner, or ever if you're outsourcing the service, like it's about doing research. It's about doing a lot of research to find out who you're actually going to be giving your product to. What is historically, how do they feel about the industry maybe? How do they feel about, the product or the service? Is that what I'm hearing you say? Like research is important?
Research is important, but you don't have the time to do it.
No, of course. That's why
you need access to the right tools. Okay. Because so if you look at our micro and macro influencer business, we've got 50,000 influencers registered, 20,000 in South Africa.
Yes.
So the worst mistake you can do is you discuss, we want to do influencer marketing, and people start shouting out names. Because that means those tend to be the ones that are overused. So I'll rather put your brand characteristics and what you're after into an AI tool and say run through 20,000 in a matter of seconds and give me a list of people that could fit this. And now they give me a list of 50, 60 names. And you'll see, listen, there's that passionate person that's perfectly, but you never thought about. And by the way, she's only got 3,000 followers, but she's making beautiful content. And you know she's very influential. You go and look at her engagement rates, and it's far more than anyone else. Then you know, right, this might be someone that I can utilize on this campaign. And you say, but the reach is not that big. I say, but that's why performance media comes in. We can amplify that reach. We're really after the content. And then you can see, listen, but if I take 10 of these, it will cost me the same as the name that I was thinking of.
Correct.
Or maybe 20 of them.
Yes.
So right now, instead of paying one person for one post, let these 10 or 20 run over the next 2-3 months for me. Every week, someone else is talking about my brand. And that's just a clever way of doing it, you know. But sometimes you do need a big macros, and then we facilitate in that regard.
Yeah.
So that's why the strategy is important. If you're launching a new product, you've got no brand reputation, you've got no trust, you need to create the awareness up front. That's where you'll deploy the micros and the macros. But then you need to lag it with nanos.
Yeah.
Because the nano is now responding to the macro, probably procure some of the product, and now you need those testimonials and those referrals. Because that's where there is more trust at smaller influencers than at bigger influencers.
I think there's a lot of business because the word nano, macro, micro, I've heard a lot now. And I mean, I think I have a good idea. But maybe just explaining the tiers. Nano would be your smallest, influencers sitting to about 3,000 followers or so. Then you would get micro, if I'm correct. And that will go up to what?
So it differs from territory to territory. Like I said, I like nano influencers to be seen as people that know their audience.
Okay.
Doesn't matter if that number is 300, 500, 800.
Okay.
A known audience, because that means I'm hugely influential there.
Yes.
Then you get your micro influencers, and there's a pot of gold in this country around it. That would be anything from possibly 5,000 to 50,000.
Okay.
And then you go to like your macros would be from the 50,000 to like 300, 500,000.
Yes.
And over that is your mega ones.
Yes.
To give you an idea, there's 26 people in South Africa that's got an influence of over 1 million.
Oh, really?
So
I thought there would be a little bit more than that.
well, if you look in the European countries and in America, you're literally a micro influencer if you got 1 million.
Yeah, okay.
I saw the other day someone on TikTok, 66 million followers.
Yeah.
So it differs from territory to territory. It's 26 people with over 1 million in South Africa. They utilize a lot by brands. They're in high demand. They can charge stop. But between that 10 and 50,000 is amazing content creators.
Okay, awesome. So, I mean, we've talked about roughly how to go about, trying to do the research, and we know that it's important to ensure that you pick the right people. Tell me a little bit about how a medium-sized business can go about this, because this can get quite time-consuming if you obviously had to go and do this yourself, because to go and find an influencer and then have a look at their track record in terms of what they've posted over the last 6 months. Have they said anything bad about my industry or a similar product, or maybe even my product? Who knows? Obviously, that's what you guys do. You guys specialize in extracting this data. Can you maybe share some insights on how you extract maybe the data and how you can slice and dice that data and help a brand find influencers best suited to their brand?
So a couple of things is, if you want to dip into this, the first thing you must do is just encourage your current customers to talk about you. And I go back to my example of a restaurant. When the waiter brings you a bill, he says, listen, I saw you took a picture of your meal. If you post that and you tag us into Facebook, every month there's a free meal for the best person that's given us the best post. And that's great. There you've created content. People now start talking about you. Some of them would, but that just encourage that as a start.
Yeah.
And then see how it goes for you. If people start saying to you, they've seen this post, that's why they come and visit you, you know it's working. And then you can sit back and say, okay, now I need to scale this, but I don't have the resources to scale this. And that's when you get in touch with people that, like us, that does it for a living. And then we'll start it. So if the strategy is nano influencers, that's very authentic, then we've got a database of about 125,000 registered nano influencers.
Sure.
So I've got big choice. And nano influencers, you don't have enough data points that you can pick up on social media because you can't deploy listening tools to private profiles.
Yes.
So our database got like between 60 and 80 data points on every person that's listed. So I know, for instance, with which medical aid you registered. I know which bank you bank. I know how many kids you've got. I know to what school your kids go to. So quite a lot of very personal information I've got.
Yes.
But I don't know, for instance, what dog food you're feeding your dogs. But I've got an ability to match all the other data points that's of interest to you. And then when I've isolated maybe 200 people that could fit perfectly your brand, I'll reach out to them and I say, listen, we do a little quiz. And the quiz will start with, are you a dog person or a cat person? And then you'll go at the different trees, and then that will end up with what's your feeding routine. And then that all builds onto more data points,
Yes.
which you then can pull out CVs, and you can produce it to the client and say, here's the guys that we think that will work on your campaign. Nano influencers also, what we do is a training session with the brand to share some heritage. And like when I said earlier on, you want to take them from fans to super fans. That's what's happening in that business. If you decide your strategy says, listen, no, I need more people with more influence, more your traditional type influencers, then we've got the tool. So we've got one of 8 companies in the world that got back-end access to audience data or Facebook and Instagram. So we know what your audiences look like. Because remember, if I've got 100,000 followers, you attach your message to me, but you really I'm just the conduit of your message to my audience.
Yes.
So I need to understand what that audience look like. What's their age group? What is their gender? Because if that doesn't tie up to my my target market, I might end up with a beautiful message going out to a wrong audience. And then it might not work as well, and you'll say influencer marketing didn't work for me. And that's why I think it's actually there's a lot of negligence involved today to invest in influencer marketing without using the tools to understand audiences.
Exactly.
And then also we got a rating system there, which is critical, because when you got 50,000 influencers registered on a platform, every half an hour we analyze audience data of every influencer.
Okay.
That audience data get compared to half an hour before and half an hour before. And that continuously roll like that. So if you've done something naughty, but like buying some influencers in India, it immediately picks you up. And then we apply a star rating to every influencer. So if your audience is not clean, then you get marked down. Similarly, when you come onto the platform will guide you to put a rate down for what you want to charge per post.
Okay.
So I come in, I've got 100,000 followers, I say I want $1,000 per post. The system will immediately run through and say, someone of your influence can only charge $100 per post.
Okay.
You now got a choice. Do I keep it 1,000 or do I put in 100? If I keep it at 1,000, the system will also mark you down. It's rather expensive for your influence.
Yes.
So your star rating will drop down, very much like an Airbnb.
Okay.
And so at the end of the day, when I produce to you a list that match your profiles, I then sort of sort them in star rating that I only produce to you the best ones. And someone's and it's you'll find quite a few influencers today in South Africa that don't want to be on platforms because we know too much about their profiles.
Really?
And when you produce those profiles to clients, they opt not to spend with them. Okay. So you'll find often that the influencer will say, "No, I'm on no platform. You deal with me directly."
Okay.
And then it's always sort of a question mark, how clean is that audience?
Yes.
And I mean, there's sometimes a brand says, "Listen, I don't mind that 50% of the audience is outside this country. I still want to align with it, but at least it's an informed decision."
Yes.
And then so tools play a big role there, because you can, without tools, it become a manual and tedious process. With tools, it's rather quick. So when you play in the digital space where we do with influencer marketing, you can't have a 2-week lead out. You need to be able, and I can activate campaigns within 24, 48, 72 hours, depending all on the complexity of the collaboration. If I need to get product to you and things like that, it's take a little bit longer. But if I need to do a brand reputation job overnight, I can be live within 24 hours.
Sure. Okay, that's quick.
So you have to, because if you in the digital space, but you still apply the lead times of traditional media, you're not going to make it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of businesses are wondering right now is like, okay, cool, I understand how it works, but does it really work for my business? How is there a guarantee? Is it a risk that I'm taking? I'm assuming all kinds of marketing strategies, to some extent, is a risk, obviously. But yeah, I'm sure you guys have had some massive success because you've grown quite nicely over the years. So obviously it must be working. But from a business owner's perspective, they might be wondering, does it really work? Can you share some successes with us, maybe, perhaps?
Yeah, well, I suppose that's where the strategies come in.
Yeah, exactly.
In the early days, success was normally reach and engagement.
True.
That's how they measured influencer marketing, which is not it might tell you your content is great from an engagement. So it's not like we're ignoring those.
This is why I have this shirt.
Yeah, sales and likes. But we're not ignoring it completely. But if I sit with you and let's say you're an e-commerce business, and very much like what you in your agency does is, I'll sit with you and say, right, so your objective with this campaign is to sign up new accounts. So that's my job. So what we'll do is we'll attach the pixels, and the influencer content will push you to the site. And then I'll be able to follow that to see how many of these guys converted to new accounts. And we would have beforehand say, okay, you would have told me to say, of every 100 people that come to my site, I convert 10% into accounts and transactions. And then I know, listen, so you say for this budget, you need to send so many to the site, and we look at the conversion rates. And then we compare my conversion rates versus yours. And then that's a very measurable outcome. Alternatively, it could be that I'm doing quite a bit of e-commerce work now where I send people to sites like Takealot. Their product is listed on Takealot, but you want to send the audience directly there and make them aware the product is there. And then you also, I can report on to where I send them to the site, what the cost was for every person I send there. And then you will, unfortunately, I can't go into Takealot, and you'll pick up from your reports how successful and what was the conversion rate and transactions. So that's it. If you want to sign up for webinars, it's very measurable. What is your current cost to sign up a prospective audience per participant? And I go and get influencers to spread a message, put performance behind it, and come back to you and say, this is my cost. Yeah. The only difference is where is that mine is inclusive of content. Normally, your measurements from a digital agency point of view is just purely on performance. You don't cost content, you don't cost content approval or anything like that. Mine is inclusive of that. So yeah, very measurable. I mean, as if it's online makes it very easy to track exactly performance. If your product is sold in stores, it becomes a little bit more tricky because you've probably got other marketing activities as well. And now you need to see whom sent you there. So we like to perform there where we can be tracked exactly. Yeah. But sometimes, sometimes a brand says, listen, I want to dominate a conversation for 3 hours. Month end. My product is relevant at month end. I want to dominate. So you say, right, then it's reach. It's very important to say, listen, we're investing in 1x performance and or influencer, but we want to have travel of 3x. So I'm getting 3 to 1. I pay for one, I get free eyeballs extra. Then those are the objectives that you need to deliver on. So every campaign is different, but it can go straight through to sales value.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys do reporting on that. So essentially, it's a matter of a brand says, look, I want to come, I want to grow my signups or subscriptions or sales.
App downloads. That's very popular now.
Yeah, the nice thing is I didn't know that it was that measurable because I knew, I think from my perspective, the last thing I was aware of was that you can measure the click-through rates and you can measure the CPMs, but what I'm understanding now is like you can literally measure it to the point where you can measure your paid campaign. So it's conversion, optimization,
Everything.
and you can literally measure the cost of a sale and maybe even lifetime value of a customer soon. Or if it's something maybe you can do already, I suppose it will be pretty awesome to know if you can measure that.
We've actually done some work where brands knew what the average transaction value was from a specific customer base, but then they want to reach out to new customer base, and we then do that through influencers, and then track our value versus their initial audience. So then it becomes a commercial, and you don't. I never advise any client to go and give me all their budget. I like to do a proof of concept first, where you give me some money. We agree on what benchmarks I need to beat, and let me go out and beat those. Because that first proof of concept will have key learnings in it. And then you tweak, and the second time, maybe a little bit more money, because you know what you can get now. The first one is where we're all nervous, although I'm very confident I'll deliver on a proof. To date, everyone I've done, I've delivered on. The second one, you give me a little bit more money, but you sleep better, because you've seen the results from the first one. And then when the tweaks in the second one come through, that's when you can scale. And then as far as I'm concerned, it becomes always on strategy.
Yeah, it's very interesting you say that, because essentially, you want to have measurable results, and you want to have a certain kind of like a predictable revenue model where you can go, I put this much in, and I'm going to get that much out. And I think we work in a very similar way. It's like we're one of those agencies that would start with as little budget as possible, because I always say there's going to be school fees, so let's make sure that we pay the least amount of school fees but learn the most amount of lessons. And then essentially you put budget behind what works. So it's interesting to see that you guys do the exact same thing, and it's actually possible with influencer marketing. Now, the next question is, like from an SME perspective and a small to medium-sized business owner, the costs involved. Like, I mean, back when, I think when I was looking at influencer marketing based on the previous company that I worked at, that they bought my first business, I worked as marketing director there, the costs were quite, it was quite high. It was, we couldn't do anything. I can't even remember who we tried to use, but we couldn't do anything for less than 30 or 40,000 Rand a month. For a lot of businesses, that's a lot of money. So my question is, like, what are the costs involved here? Is it affordable? And what is the minimum amount that you can start with to start doing a proof of concept or something like that?
So yeah, that's $1 million question. So to make it worth your while, I think it's around about 50,000 Rand.
Okay.
Can get a proof of concept going at a scale that can give you real results. The problem with a lot of proof of concepts is if you push it too small, you don't really get the metrics you're after.
Correct.
So you need to get it to a certain level. So if you look at the 50,000 Rand budget, 10 of that would possibly be content creation, and the other 20 would be just shifting from your existing brand performance to influencer performance.
Yeah.
So it's not like you take a complete gamble or find a new budget. You're just shifting across to say using the same tools, just with different content. How's that doing for us? So, but yeah, that makes it that there wouldn't be any the hours we invest into a deal like that wouldn't make it profitable. But that's not what we're after. We want to prove a point, and then possibly prove our point again at a little bit of a bigger scale. And then when it commercially makes sense, it should go to always on. And then obviously is when you start getting payback for your efforts and stuff.
No, of course, it's all about the longevity and the profitability of the relationship down the line. And I think I had a conversation with someone else the other day, and it's actually with Gilbert in our office. I was saying, like, I actually haven't really thought about it, but our average client has been with us for about 14 to 16 months. That is the average going rate for a client, which is really nice to see, just purely because, we're 2 years and 4 months old. So it was nice to see that the average client has been around for about, 80% of that.
Yeah, that's brilliant,
and
because that means you're doing a good job for them.
It's the same on your end, because you start small and you build out that relationship, and you try and prove to the person essentially that you are here to be in a situation where you're trying to add value. So it's not going to be worth it for me today, but I'm not doing it for today. I'm doing it for tomorrow and the next, for the next 2 or 3 months, to see if we can both be profitable, because essentially it's a relationship with the business and the owner, and essentially they want to start and test something out, and they want to ensure that they have a profitable relationship, And even though it's not going to be profitable for you, it could be profitable for you down the line. So it's all about the eccentric value of the relationship, which is really cool.
Yeah, and when you measuring real performance and outcomes, that's exciting, because now you treat your client more than a partner than just a client, because
100%.
we sort of in bed together to learn and get this going, you know. So for me, that's a different relationship, and then what's great about us is that I can tap into other experiences, you know. So I know that if you say this is what you want to do, I can show you a case study where that hasn't worked as well.
Yes.
Or I at least can make you aware of my concerns. At the end of the day, if you don't want to listen to me and you want to follow your own, that's fine. But at least I need to put out what my reservations are. And yeah, so because like I say, you don't have to go and pay school fees every time you try something new. There's enough e-commerce channels. There's enough health products that's been on influencer marketing. There's FMCG. So, yeah.
Are there any specific case studies you can share with us? I mean, you don't have to mention names of brands, but do you have any numbers? For example, this client put in this much, and then after 3 months they got in that much, or?
Yeah, so recent. I'm just recalling some of the recent ones. We've recently done quite on an e-commerce platform where we had to measure sales uplift.
Okay.
And we got 31 times our ad spend, ROAS.
Wow, okay.
So if you think so, as an accountant, sometimes I look at it differently. I said that 31 times sounds amazing. And that's how we like
it. 3,000 odd percent, 30%, 30,000%.
Yeah, and that's crazy. There's too many noughts there, you know. But the way I look at it, I work it back, and that means the investment into the sale was 3.64%.
Yeah.
So if your average GP is 20%, it means your investment into it was just 3.64.
Yeah, it's profitable.
So, but if your margin is 3%, then you can't continue with that model.
Correct.
It was too expensive. But so that's one study where we've done e-commerce, and in that particular campaign, there was another metric that wasn't a performance metric. We were pushed for sales. And when I say that was a return on ad spend, we almost opened 800 new accounts as well through that exercise.
Nice. Wow.
Now, if you bring in the lifetime value of those clients,
yes.
that return is like just crazy. Then recently,
can I stop you there? What was the budget out of interest for that 31x return?
Yeah, that's a little bit sensitive to share that number, but I can tell you now that budget is just going to grow.
Yeah,
because
was it less than 50? No.
Yeah, you're not far off.
Okay.
But the reality is after that proof of concept, is you will it can only grow because there's very few channels that can deliver that sort of return.
Yeah.
Other one was I don't know, with this COVID there was lots of virtual events taking place, and hard lockdown it really worked well because people had lots of time and things like that. I think post lockdown there's still, but now there's too much content trying to fight for our limited time.
Correct.
And a particular brand at event set up, and they use the event as a lead gen tool.
Okay.
Because think about it, it's a qualified. If I'm interested in, say for instance, this is now the time to invest in houses, and that's the webinar. If I tune in there, I'm a qualified lead from an investment perspective.
Yes.
So they use these things to do lead gens, and we came to them and they said, okay, this is our cost. This is what we're willing to pay for a lead. And we beat it by 2.8x.
Oh, nice.
Lady, when we phoned her with the results, she said, you just got me a raise.
That's awesome.
And that's the kind of thing, because think about it. If a brand says, come to this event versus I'm saying, listen, guys, we shouldn't miss this one.
Yes.
I know exactly who to send it to, who's be interested in that particular topic. So that's what we... So they, what else?
No, shame. I mean, two is more than enough. But I think from my side, I think it's really important to know that, the money that you're investing is spent well. And I think we usually say there's two types of values. The first prize would always be results, to get as many results, bottom line results as possible. So sales, revenue. But the second type of value is insight, to get to understand your audience better, to get to understand. So, for example, if we run a campaign and we start with a small budget, we say first prize would be to get sales. And essentially what happens, 80-70% of the time, there would be some sales, and that's great, and we can break even, and we can take it from there. But the second type of value, I would say, like, if we can't justify that, if we can't get the sales, at least we have a ton of information right now that we can use in order to improve what we've done. So whether you want to go with us or someone else, at least you've got all this information. You can take it to them. You know what resonates with your audience. You know that your conversion rate on your store is below benchmarks. You're going to have to improve that. You know that your checkout process is probably not seamless enough. There's too much friction in there. So, I mean, we have to, that's kind of like what the kind of data that we get out of our campaigns, because we want to manage that bottom line. And I'm assuming it's the same on your end, where you start, you learn, you improve, and then you just allocate more budget in order to ensure that you keep that success going.
So I mean, as most of the metrics you've gathered, so you can improve it to a point. From a paid media perspective, you've got your brand advertising, and you can do it very well to a point. And then you'll start seeing, listen, this is the number, this is the metric now.
Yes.
We sent traffic at this cost per click through, and this is the percentage that convert.
Correct.
And we've now streamlined the website, the customer experience is great, and we got the help of. At that point is where normally you now need to sit and say, am I going to live with this? Is this the numbers? Or is there, and then normally is where I sit back and I say, now we need to have a conversation around influencers. Because if influencers can come in and through the trusted referral sort of network, improve on that, then there should be a reallocation of the split. But yeah, that's normally my advice, is to say, I come in, I know your metrics is as sweet as they can be. Now I need to see if I can do better on that.
Awesome. And Pieter, I think if anybody wanted to reach out to you or the team, essentially, where can they get hold of you? Website, social media channels, anything specific that you can share with the people listening, and if anybody was interested to inquire or.
Yeah, so we've got the SALT, it's influential, the SALT, Webfluential, the internship, which is the employee influencers, and EchoCast, our podcast. All those businesses got websites. I'm an observer on a lot of social media platforms, but you'll definitely notice me on LinkedIn, very active there and sharing content about our space. So possibly, if you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is the best door to knock on.
Pieter Groenewald on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for coming through. From my side, it was a really awesome experience. I think we've shared a lot of insight and we've added a lot of value. I want to thank you for that. And from my side, thanks again. All the best, and keep going and keep doing what you guys are doing.
No, thanks, Jandre. I appreciate the effort to talk about this and you playing a part in educating the market in this exciting space.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All the best. Cheers.
Okay.